Okay, so for today's Zooms in, I'm talking to Darran Pearce. Oh, Darran, thanks for giving up some of your time
Yeah, no
again.
worries, Simon.
Because previously we've met, we've done a betting people interview. I think it's probably about 12 months ago now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Um,
Yeah, just over. Yeah.
yeah. So for those who haven't seen it, and if you haven't seen it, it's very good. Um, just explain what it is you bet on.
So I specialise in hunter chases when it comes to horse racing. Also do a bit of Australian jumps racing for as long as that continues. Hopefully, it will continue for a long time because it was close to being axed this year, and non-league football as well. So they're the three things that I mainly bet on and tip on. I run a hunter chase service, non-league service, and then the Australian jumps racing goes up for free.
Okay, oh, it's for free. Is it the Australian
The
jumps
Australian,
racing?
yeah, the Australian jumps racing goes up for free. Yeah, there's a meeting coming up this Sunday at Casterton. And Casterton's one of my favourite tracks because they have hedge fences, so it's like traditional hedge fences. So and it's quite a quirky venue where you get your specialists. So yeah, it's one of my favourite tracks over in Australia.
Now you're quite well, I wouldn't say prolific, but you're on Twitter or X as
Yes.
we call it these days. Are you still doing stuff for the Punters Lounge?
Yeah, that's where the Australian jumps racing goes. I mean, I do dabble on the flat. Obviously, when you get to the Melbourne Cup and the Sprint Carnival, I do cover some of the flat racing as well. But during COVID, obviously, when racing stopped here, I was doing flat racing every week in Australia. But with the other stuff, I just couldn't carry on once the non-league football and under chases kicked in. I couldn't carry on doing the flat stuff every week. I just didn't have enough time. So I carried on doing the jumps racing because there's only a few meetings during the season. Most of them take place on a Sunday. Obviously, most of them take place in the summer. So I'm not really doing a great deal at the moment, apart from the Australian jump stuff. So it fitted quite nicely in. And they have a relatively small pool of horses. So you tend to see the horses week in, week out. Most of them don't have any chance whatsoever. So you can narrow it down quite quickly as well. So I think it's quite a good punting medium.
Okay, talking of good punting mediums, I mean, I subscribed to you this year for the Hunters
You did,
Chases.
yeah.
I'm very impressed with the results, but also that the detail that you go to for the work. So in the closed season, are you sort of going back through everything? Do you sort of go through it with a fine tooth comb, or do you let it lie and start
I
again afresh?
honestly, I just let it lie. I'll come back to it fresh when we start off again in January, presumably at Taunton. They usually have the first hunting chase of the season. But yeah, I just come back afresh to it. I mean, as you say, it is quite detailed. I like writing the detailed previews because I mean when I usually send the emails out around about 9 a.m. and so you're tipping based on the odds at that time. As you know, there's been the horses that are backed that put up that do get backed in, but then there are other horses that I give a chance to that were too short at the time, but then obviously drift out closer to race time. Suddenly, and if they were the prices at 9 a.m., I would have tipped up a different horse. So I've had people who have subscribed and said to me, "Look, I read your preview. I wasn't able to get on at the price of the tip, but then one of the other ones you fancied drifts out, and that's one. So I'm happy anyway." And it's one of the reasons why the preview is just as important as the tips. Obviously, I want to make a profit and did very well this season just gone, but people can use what I say and use it to bet with how they want to bet. So they might want to, if I'm against the favorite, they might want to lay the favorite. I know people have done tricasts and forecasts if I'm strong on two or three horses, and they've collected from those as well. And it's yes, there is a tip, but you don't have to stick rigidly to what I'm saying. It's a case of I make them in depth so people can use them how they want to use them and how they like to bet. And yeah, like I say, obviously I want to be in profit with the tips, but uh, people seem to be very happy with what I do. And the crucial because I also send reviews of the races out, so then it's all fresh in my mind. So I don't necessarily need to go back. But if there's a horse that I've forgotten what did I think about that, then I can just type it into my email search and it comes up with the review of the race that I sent out. So I can read back and see what I thought about it at the time.
I'm assuming that you don't take such a passive approach with a non-league football. You have to be sort of keeping your eye on transfers and
Yeah.
comings and goings and that sort of thing. I think we talked about it in the Bet People interview, which can be found on the Star Sports website. Um, you've got to sort of be looking at the local newspapers and
Yeah.
all that sort of thing. So, how much would you sort of set aside a bit of time for doing that during the close season?
Um, it's just keeping an eye on Twitter because all the clubs release their transfers and who's left and who's coming on Twitter. So it's just sort of scrolling through there. I still get the non-league paper every week, so because obviously you might miss a couple of things and think, oh, I didn't realize they'd signed him, or I didn't realize he'd gone. Just because purely when they put it up on Twitter, it was time I wasn't scrolling through, but. Yeah, he's obviously you are. I'm glad of the break, but it is almost a year-round job. Okay, I'm not writing previews, but like you say, you've got to keep on top of what's happening, and the anti-post stuff is very important to my service. Arguably, it's been more successful than the match-to-match basis have, and I know there's people who. Because I do a monthly subscription, there's people who are just subscribed for August, so I give them all the previews for August, but they won't carry on because the main thing they wanted was the anti-post stuff, and it showed a very small profit, the anti-post stuff this season. It was a little bit unlucky. I had a couple of teams that I backed; they were top of the table going into the final game. Would have been quite long odds on to win the titles, and neither of them won the title. So it was a thing like that. It didn't quite go my way, but at least I did show a profit. But yeah, it's the one thing that I seem to be very strong on is the anti-post stuff. It's always done well for me.
Okay, and then you're you're a winning punter, but you have no desire. I'm assuming there's no further desire to be a professional punter
Oh God, no.
than there was last time.
No.
Is it
I think it would end up in divorce, Simon. To be honest, if I said to
well,
my
that
wife,
depends if you won or lost, wouldn't it?
I just think the hunter chase stuff is I think we just had about 50 odd races this year. Once you have abandonments, so there was due to be 60 odd. I mean, I couldn't make a living just based on a few races a year, and even on the football, I don't think I would ever be in a position to get on the amount I would need to get on to make it profitable. And I think football is very hard. I'm always honest. I made a very tiny lot. I think it was about 3 points. If Oldham had won the playoff final, I would have been in profit for the season. And the fact, well, they did win it eventually, but it was in extra time, and I backed them in the 90 minutes. If they'd won in 90 minutes, I would have made a very tiny profit. But as it was, I made a very tiny loss. And I think football betting is so hard. If you're a professional punter and you bet solely on football, and then fair play to you, because you could have so many. I watch loads of games because DAZN currently show all the National League stuff, and I watch so many games, and especially games I've had a bet on, and you just think, oh, God, I've been so unlucky there. And so the amount of teams I've had, I backed Hensford twice last season in the FA Cup, and then they had a league game as well. They were 3-0 up in both games and failed to win both games. And it's like, of course it does. I know you tend to remember, obviously I had some lucky wins as well, but so many bad beats. You just think, I really should have been shown a decent profit, but that's football for you. You're relying on referee decisions. You're relying on strikers scoring goals, and I think it's very hard, and the margins are obviously very tight as well, because obviously most of the teams you're betting are relatively short. So yeah, I just have. I mean, obviously, I would be able to devote more time, especially to the non-league stuff. I'd be able to have the time to watch even more replays and things like that. But yeah, it just wouldn't be for me. I would be putting extra pressure on myself, extra pressure for my family. You obviously rely on my main wage as well.
Do you enjoy that pain? Do you enjoy the agony of watching a team go 3-0 up and then still lose? I mean, is it enjoyable to put yourself through
No,
that excitement? And
yeah.
would it be not better just to see what the result was?
Sometimes I think it would. I mean, the one thing I will say is if I am keeping an eye of it in running, I will, depending on what price they are, I do tend to lay off at least for the stake. So if a team goes 1-0 up and you sort of getting into the last 20 minutes, and so they're 1 to 2, maybe even shorter, then I thought, well, I'll lay off from the stake and cover that because obviously you get so many bar beats. I can't remember. I probably did with Hensford. I don't know. I can't remember because it was the FA Cup first round, so it would have been on Betfair. So keeping an eye on it does help. I mean, I quite enjoy. I say enjoy. I mean, I like to watch the games because obviously then you get a true sense of as what happens. But then there's been time I'm likely to be going to Australia again next year, and was in Australia last year because my wife's Australian. And obviously, when you're over there, the games happen in the middle of the night. So I'm not following them then. It's literally wake up and see what the scores was. Although I did when we were coming back from Melbourne last time, there was Wi-Fi on the plane over Australia. It was the final day of the National League season, and our plane had been delayed slightly. And so by the time we were in the air, the games had kicked off in the National League, and so I was trying to watch one of them for the stream, but the Wi-Fi wasn't strong enough. So I was following the scores in the air until we left Australian airspace. So that was quite an interesting experience.
Did you get to go to some of these jump racing?
In Australia,
Yeah.
I did, yes, yeah. I went to unfortunately Pakenham, which is the closest track to where my mother-in-law lives. They've stopped jumps racing now. Their last jumps meeting in April, which was the meeting I went to last year. It's quite a controversial subject in Australia, jumps racing. Like, as I said at the start, they nearly axed it. I half thought they might axe it. There was a few deaths of horses last year, especially in the Grand National, which is the final race of the season at Ballarat. A horse came down, then brought 3 down with it, and the horse that came down first died. I think there were a couple of quite serious jockey injuries as well. And obviously, it's not a good look. I mean, we're more used to it over here because obviously we see lots more jumps racing. And there was a horse that died at Sandown at the start of June. I've not seen it properly because they edited it out of the replays, and obviously I'm not staying up during the night to watch them live most of the time. So I was only able to watch the replay, but it sounded like quite a bad injury after the horse had landed after the jump. And the reaction on Twitter was like, we need to ban jumps racing. It's not a good look for the sport and all this. And it's just like, well, that, as far as I'm aware, that's the only horse that has died so far this season in Australian jumps races. It's like, well, don't watch it then. It's quite, there was a strong core in Australia, from what I can tell, that really loved the sport. And if you go to the Warrnambool May Carnival, it is centered around jumps racing. I sort of think that the only reason jumps racing survived was because of the Warrnambool May Carnival, and they have a race called the Grand Annual, which is their longest race. And you get people stood up on the hill, and people go to Warrnambool to watch the jumps racing. If you axe jumps racing, they wouldn't get the crowds that they do just for the flat stuff. So I hope it continues, but it is under threat, and I guess it's the same over here. That that something like the Grand National, people see it if the horses die, and then you keep eroding at it. So yeah, I just hope it continues. Because I like I say, I enjoy it, and you get some good ex-flat horses over here sometimes running in jumps races in Australia.
We're getting back over to closer to home.
Yeah,
you're also a captain on Colossus, and I followed you for Royal Ascot. So
yeah,
obviously you're taking an interest in the sort of the flat racing. Do you, as like a winning punter, do you find that, I'm assuming you can't put as much time into that as you would do? Well, it'd be impossible to put as much time into Royal Ascot as you would
yeah.
do your hunter chases. So do you find that the interest, that needing to have an interest, erodes away at what would normally be a successful year to be a slightly less successful year, or have you won
Yeah,
money?
I maybe from a sins, I've always sort of had Cheltenham and Royal Ascot are the two festivals I sort of get involved in, and I'll be totally honest with you, Simon. I had a terrible week punting on Royal Ascot last week, and it sort of made me think, it's like, do I really need to be doing this? Because obviously, as you know, I put up a winner at Worcester,
Yeah, yeah.
back to 11. Well, that profit went via Royal Ascot, and I did well out of Jetstream last week. And it was just like, I'd had some lucky, unlucky losses. Horses that back to win and finish second, horses that backed each way, just finishing out the frame. And I was like, okay, yes, historically I've done well at Royal Ascot, but I didn't do so well last year. Done even worse this year. And it's like, do I really need to be doing this? But I enjoy looking at the meet. I love Royal Ascot. I think it's a great flat meeting. As I say, it's the one flat meeting I watch. I like doing the Colossus stuff. Obviously, that we had a couple of small.
Well, yeah, we won it, but everybody else won it, didn't we? That was a bit unlucky, but no, but I mean that's all part of the fun. But what I mean is, obviously, when you put so much work into the hunter chases and you understand it absolutely thoroughly, is it not against the grain a bit? On the hardest race meeting of the year.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of like the challenge, and it's been tradition, but I think it is something that I will have to sort of look back next year and think, do I really need to be punting so strong on a meeting that I'm not, not so sure on? And it's like, to use as a good example, the horse Rebel Dawn Rising, which I'm sure you will know very well because it won us a lot of money last season on the Hunter Chase front. Now, a race when it made its return at Leicester, the horse pulled up. Now, if you're looking at that, you think, oh, well, I don't really fancy it for its next start, pulled up that time. But it was a massive eye catcher, and you would only know it was an eye catcher if you watched that race at Leicester. Now, I watch every single Hunter Chase, even the match that we had at Exeter. I just make sure that I watch them, and usually more than once as well. And because of seeing Rebel Dawn Rise, that's a massive eye catcher. We then then went on to win its next 3 starts, and we were on each time. And I worked out over half the profit was fire Rebel Dawn Rising in the service this season. So he really owes us nothing. But I obviously don't have the time to watch through every flat replay. And you just think, well, there could be little things that you're missing that people who do get to have the time to watch all the replays and stuff will see that I necessarily haven't. So, yeah, it could be that if I want to have a punt, maybe I look at a tipster who's been doing well at Royal Ascot instead of sort of going through my own opinion, so to speak. But obviously, with the Colossus stuff, if you're enjoying it, obviously, I have put the time and effort in, but it would be impossible for me to spend the time on, 35 races at Royal Ascot as I do on the season and chase wise.
What about the last time we spoke, just over a year ago, you were having to use up to 5 bookmakers sometimes to get, if you wanted 5 points, your maximum.
Yeah.
Is that still the case? Have you managed to find other, have you got like a little team that go around now, or are you
No, I don't have a little team. I'm not going to name them, but there is actually one bookmaker who seemed to have eased their restrictions on me. I'm not really sure why, but it's quite helpful that they've done that. So I only sort of noticed that towards the end of the football season. So I'm hoping that when the new season comes around that I'll be okay on that front. But yeah, it is still a case of having to use multiple bookmakers. Betfair, the exchange for the National League stuff, I've been using that a bit more this season, which is quite handy, especially obviously the 100 chase stuff usually always goes out 9 a.m. the morning of the race, but the non-league stuff it's more variable because just when I get the time to send it out. So it could be Thursday, it could be Friday, occasionally it could even be a Saturday morning. And obviously, the closer it's to the game, the more that you can get on, and the prices more steady as well. So that sort of helps. But yeah, especially at step 3, if I'm wanting to bet on step 3, that could take 2 or 3 bookmakers. I've opened the account with Bet Goodwin last season because they sort of bet that low and they seem to take a decent enough bet. I've got a Star Sports account which I'd only used to have a bet on who was going to headline Glastonbury a few years ago. But I started using. I was like, they're pricing up non-league football, maybe not down to step 3, but certainly national. So I've been using Star Sports a bit more. I know they're smaller bookies, but you can trust them because they've got some of these smaller bookies online you can't necessarily trust, and some of them have gone bust. I had an anti-post bet with one that they went bust and they weren't honouring their anti-post bets. I thought, I can't be going through this again. But with the likes of Star Sports, Bet Goodwin, they've got a presence on track in the horse racing. So then they're not going to go bust anytime soon, if at all. So they're smaller bookmakers who you can rely on to have a bet with.
Would you, sort of, when you're betting on the football, I'm assuming your football bets are more prolific than your hunter chase bets. Would you be prepared to take slightly under the odds just to move you move your money around
Yeah,
different bookmakers?
yeah. It's obviously as long as they're still above the minimum price that I'm happy with, then yeah. I mean, I should add, if I don't put the top price, generally speaking, as the recommended price. So it'll be like the price that is available to most bookmakers. So if you were able to get the top price at all my bets this season, you probably would have made a profit. To be fair, because the loss was so small. But I can't always necessarily get those top prices myself. So I will sort of take under the top price if need be. And obviously, I know that the people following me, they might not be able to get that top price either. So that's why I try and be fair and honour the profit and loss to sort of slightly lower level if needs be, unless obviously 3 or 4 bookmakers are a top price, and then obviously we'll use that.
Okay, finally, Darren, because I know you're a busy man. You got to got work this afternoon, etc.
Yeah.
Has anything changed in the last 12 months? Have you sort of added anything to your arsenal, or have you changed the way you do anything or look at things at all?
Um, I don't think so. There could be one possible change. I was a subscriber to Y Scout on the non-league front, and Y Scout is a stat service, and you can watch replays, and they do XG and all that stats. But I've heard that they've upped the price quite substantially, and if I can't get the sort of rough price that I'm on, then it's going to be too expensive for me to carry it on. So that will be something. There are some free stats based things, maybe not quite as good as Y Scout. I really like the way Y Scout, you can if there was a shot, you could just see that the 20-second clip of the shot, and get you think, oh, okay, well, a rough sense of whether the XG was correct or not. So that could be something that I've used for the last few years that I might not be able to use this year coming, but just because it might be too expensive. But other than that, though, I wouldn't have said so. The hunter chase stuff, keep on watching reviews of races point to point wise. I mean, I'd love to go to more point to points, but I just, with the family situation and time, I just don't get the chance. I did that. I went to 2 meetings last season, but one of those, Chadsey Corbett over Christmas, the amount of times I wrote that in previews this year, it was off the scale. That's a really crucial meeting for me to go to if possible, because there's so many horses that end up running and hunter chases, end up winning hunter chases that come from that meeting, and just being there and seeing it with my eyes does really help the situation.
I love point to points as well, and I only went to a couple this year. I'm trying to get my kids to fall in love with it, but there's too many Sundays in the West Country.
Yeah.
And you being a family man as well, you've been going racing or betting all week.
Yeah, and that's it. It's sometimes a choice of, well, do I go racing, just spend time with the family? And to be honest, a lot of the point-to-point courses that around here in the southeast, where I live in London, they don't exist anymore. Tweedledown's gone. There's others that have gone, and then southeast is so weak now that even going to like a Godstone or a Charing, those horses aren't appearing in hunter chases. And yes, I love going pointing, but for me to need to go somewhere, they have to. There has to be purpose going forward, because I'm not going to be backing these horses in points going on, because I probably won't be there. So I need them to be turning up in hunter chases, so that I've seen it. But I've mentioned before, I've got a disabled 6-year-old now. He's just had his birthday, and to take him pointing, it would be very tricky. He needs a wheelchair, although we use his pushchair as a wheelchair. And as you know, Simon, if it's a muddy field, that's not going to agree with a pushchair. So yeah, you just have to make those choices, and and obviously the family needs me more than I need to go point to pointing, unfortunately.
Yeah. Same here as well. So finally, then, Darren, non-league football, I think it starts a bit earlier than the Premier
I
League, doesn't it?
think
So
it
we're only
starts a little bit. Yeah, I think it's going to be the 9th, 10th of August, whichever
yeah.
the
So
Saturday is. Yeah,
Not long
so
away
not too
then.
far away. Yeah.
So when would your non-league stuff start appearing, and where would people find it?
So I will put up on Twitter when I'm sort of taking subscribers. Like I say, I was totally honest. I did make a very tiny loss last season, but I had quite a decent profit the season before. The anti-post the season before that was off the scale. So overall, last few years, I'm still way in front, and it's just those variances as we know in betting that can happen. So don't let the fact that I lost a tiny amount last year put you off signing up if you want an interest. Even if you don't, even if you just want the anti-post stuff to follow for the season, then just I'm perfectly fine with people just doing that as well. So I'll probably, what are we getting towards the end of June? So I will probably put that up sort of mid-July. Only the National League's priced up anti-post wise at the moment. Bookmakers are very variable of when they put up step 2 and step 3. Slight inconvenience that I'm going on holiday to Scotland at the start of August, so it might be the case of sending some anti-post stuff while I'm on holiday. But again, it's something I'm used to. When I was in Australia, I was sending out Hunter Chase and football preview. So it's just a case of obviously going on holiday when I can, but sometimes the work crosses over as well, which obviously is slightly annoying because I'd like to just totally switch off, but I know I can't because obviously people are paid for the service, and you almost don't want to miss out on something as well. So yeah, I'll put it up. It'll be on Twitter or X if anyone's interested in subscribing to that, and then the Hunter Chase stuff will start again in January. I do a combination. If you want to sign up to both services, a discount as well. So if you're interested in both, then you can take full advantage of that as well.
Excellent. Well, thanks for your time, Darran. Really
No
appreciate it.
worries.
And I can vouch for the. I mean, I've not been paid to say this, and Darren's not been paid to
No.
do this interview, but his Hunter Chase stuff really was very good and excellent value at what he charged. So that's an endorsement from me for what it's worth. So
No, thank you, Simon.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much, and hope to see you around at some point. In the meantime, enjoy Scotland, and let's hope their internet's working.
Yeah, thanks.
Cheers, mate. Thank
Cheers.
you. Hello everyone, just a quick one. If you have enjoyed these videos and are enjoying these videos, can you please like and subscribe to my channel? Thanks very much.